Welcome to After the Paycheck, the series dedicated to helping people to and through their retirement process. I'm your host, Adam Bly. This week, I am here with Ryan Marston, partner here at Rubino & Lang Wealth Partners, an investment advisor representative. I learned what that is a few weeks ago with John. Not that I wasn't really aware of what you did,
Yeah,
but I didn't realize that title was so significant for someone of you and John's stature.
yeah. It gives us a lot of ability to kind of guide our clients and prospective clients through markets like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you can tell, we are here remotely today. Ryan and I both have kids under the age of 2, and it's been a handful for both of us at home right now.
I was gonna say you might hear him in the background because it's not quite nap time yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, yeah. We might like that video when the kids like playing in the background when the guy's doing an interview. That might happen here too. Yeah. Ryan, I asked you here today because we wanted to discuss something that you've been doing with a lot of your clients actually lately. But I want to get into how people can kind of understand this before they start talking with the financial advisor, and it's kind of how to measure your retirement goals versus what your current portfolio is doing or consists of. So, but before we get into that, I want to help you. I'm sorry, I want you to help me define the difference between someone having like retirement accounts and retirement goals, and then finally, like what an actual plan is.
Yeah. So I think there's a big disconnect there. A retirement account is just it's nothing more than just your investments. Like it could be your 401k, an IRA, Roth 401k, whatever it might be, or an individual brokerage account. But it's that's just the account that really holds your investments, and then you purchase whether it be ETFs, mutual funds, individual stocks, bonds, annuities inside those accounts, right? That's just what a retirement account is. But having retirement goals is more on the side of, I want to retire at 65. I want this type of income when I retire. I want to go on vacations, even though like a vacation right now seems like a far thought, right? But
Yeah.
I want to go on vacations and spend 5, 10,000 a year. That those are retirement goals, and I think the biggest disconnect is really just putting those two together.
Gotcha. And then that's kind of where the plan comes into play is setting up to make sure that you have a process so that your retirement accounts are funded enough so that way you can reach your retirement goal, right?
Exactly. Any good retirement plan should marry those two things together.
Okay.
Make sure that the investments align with what your goals are going into retirement. Otherwise, you might not be able to hit those goals. You might be too aggressive. You might be too conservative. But your retirement accounts need to really mirror what your goals are and
Okay.
commingle with those.
So what is something that you do to help people understand how that correlation works or exists?
So the first thing we would do is really an analysis of their current investments, benchmark analysis, if you will.
Benchmark. Okay.
And really take a look at how a prospective client is currently invested, right? And we'll go through that and really dive into their current investments. After that, we'll talk about goals and their risk tolerance and really figure out what type of investments they should be in. And then ultimately what we would do is compare the two together and make sure those investments do align with what that client or prospective client's goals are, right? Because if you want to retire at 65, based on your contributions, your savings, your current investments, you need to earn upwards of 7% or more a year. You might have to be a little more aggressive with those investments. Whereas maybe you did a good job saving to the point where you're at, and you only need to earn 3, 4% in order to get to or hit your retirement goals. Well, you maybe can put on the brakes a little bit and become a little more conservative, right? And I think one of the large things we're seeing recently over the course of the past couple months in talking with prospective clients is there's a big disconnect there, and maybe they took on more of a loss with their retirement accounts than they needed to because those retirement accounts really just didn't marry well together with what their retirement goals were.
Okay. Can you go into like maybe a hypothetical numbers example of how that might be when you're sitting down with somebody?
Yeah, so talking with I'm just going to throw out an example of maybe sitting down with a couple who husband and wife, and they're both 55 years old, right?
Okay.
And their goals are to retire at age 65. we'll really do we'll take an inventory of what their income will be, what their Social Security projections look like. Do they have pensions or rental income, any other outside sources? And we compare that to what their expenses are, what their goals are going to be in retirement. And just as an example, let's say their goal in retirement expenses are $80,000. They need $80,000 net income in order to live. Well, first you got to make sure you factor in inflation to that 80,000, and then what we would do is really figure out the delta or the difference between what those expenses are and what those guaranteed income sources are. So let's just say between rental income, pension, Social Security, this couple was taking in 60,000 and their expenses were about 80, and not even factoring in taxes or anything like that right now, just for ease. That's a difference or delta of $20,000. So they needed $20,000 to be produced from those retirement accounts that we originally talked about, whether it's the 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, those types of accounts. So they need to be invested and contributed to for the next 10 years properly in order to fund these retirement goals for this couple, right? So when we look at that and we project out what they need in 10 years when they turn 65, we can properly say, hey, we need to either earn, maybe it's 3 to 5% a year, or more aggressive return of maybe 7 to 10% a year. And based on what we need for those returns is how we're going to invest that account. And looking at the investments, obviously a more aggressive investment would have more equity exposure, less might have more bond or annuity exposure, more guaranteed on the guaranteed side. So making sure those investments mirror what the retirement goals are and having a really good picture on what your retirement goals are is key when thinking about a retirement plan or going over your retirement plan.
Gotcha. Is there a point where it's too early to start something like this, or like, is there an appropriate age where I should wait until for this?
I don't think it might be, if you're 35, maybe it's a little too early because you have other things on
I
the
want to get
more
started
immediate
now.
horizon. But I don't think it's too early, especially where with what you're experiencing today. And, everyone's lost some percentage of assets if you're invested in the market or between equities and bonds right now. And I think, as you get when you're maybe 10, 15 years away from retirement, it doesn't hurt to take a look at this. But definitely, as we like to say, you're in the retirement red zone when you're at least 10 years away from retirement, that sweet spot. You definitely want to make sure you're looking at what your goals are and how your accounts are invested. Because if something like what's happening now, this pandemic, which nobody could have foreseen, a year or two ago, happens, as you're getting ready for retirement, right at the the 5-yard line or the 2-yard line, and you're getting ready to punch it in the end zone, it could really set you back. And instead of being able to retire at 65, we might have to extend that out and say, we might have to retire at 70, or you have to reduce that expense of 80,000 a year to 60,000 a year. And nobody wants to do either one of those things. So making sure you have a kind of a good grasp on both your retirement goals and retirement accounts, which we like to call the 365 plan, is when we commingle those.
Yeah.
It's crucial when thinking about retirement.
So is there a point? How often should I get this analysis done? This benchmark analysis? Is there like yearly, like every 5 years?
Yeah,
Should I do
think
it while I'm in retirement too?
you should definitely you do really the thorough analysis, once, and as long as it's done properly, it's very easy to monitor that on a yearly basis going forward, saying, are we still on track? Are we still on track? Do we need to maybe we had a really, really good year and we can take the foot off the brake and maybe not be as aggressive with our investments. So although you want to have that thorough analysis done once, you really want to make sure you're monitoring that, right? Because investments change and the markets change. So
Like we're seeing right now. Yeah.
exactly. Unfortunately for the worse. Yeah.
Right. Right. So that was one analysis that we talked about, the benchmark analysis. And I thought you mentioned that there's another one that you typically work or look at with your clients, or am I missing that?
No, I mean, the benchmark is really the current analysis. And then after we really dive in deep into how they're currently invested, that's when we're able to really fine tune things and say, well, maybe you're a little overexposed in equities, maybe specifically large cap or mid cap, small cap equities, or underexposed in investment grade bonds, or you need more sources of guaranteed income. So that's the second step of the analysis, but really taking a deep dive in how people are currently invested is step one.
Okay. So let's say we go through that benchmark analysis and realize that there is that shortfall like you're talking about, and maybe we have to be a little bit more aggressive. What are some of the steps that you take as an advisor to help people meet that shortfall?
So if there's a shortfall, first you need to really talk it through with the clients. And I had a conversation recently with a current client, and ultimately what they were going to do is try to increase their contributions to 401ks. That was going to be one measure they were going to take, and we were going to gradually increase it. You don't go from 10% to 15 to 20% at once, because you're really going to feel it in the paycheck. But if we can gradually increase from like 10% to 11% to 12% over a period of time, you don't feel it as much. So that's one step. We can save more.
Yep.
The other thing is we really take a deep dive into their expenses and say, again, using an example, is the $80,000 a year you need in retirement realistic? Are we overestimating certain things? Are you incorporating a mortgage payment that's actually going to be paid off 5 years into retirement? So we got to literally look specifically at certain things like that. And then once we do that, if decreasing expenses is not something they want to do, the only other option is getting more aggressive with investments. But that comes at a trade-off of, if we get more aggressive, we have a year like this, we might experience a larger loss than what we're comfortable with.
Gotcha. So yeah, that does kind of determine the risk return tactics that you're going to be using for everything. Okay. So so I guess this kind of goes back to kind of tie everything up together. People have retirement accounts, and if they're not really thinking about what their retirement goals are, you can't really have a plan in place to make sure that you're going to reach those goals. Oh, might have $1 million, but if you have no idea what your expenses are and what you want to do in retirement, that's just kind of an arbitrary number that you have in your retirement accounts, correct?
100% correct. Yeah. I think, again, people do get confused, just because they have retirement accounts, they might think they have a retirement plan, but retirement goals and retirement accounts are two different things. The retirement plan is really what should bring everything together in one cohesive, type of, document, PDF, whatever it might be, to track where you currently are and make sure you stay on track for retirement and even through retirement.
Perfect. I think we've done this before in a previous episode. I think we should let people at the end of this video get that income gap calculator that we've given away before.
Yes, I love, as a tool, send that out to anyone I deal with if they don't have like a good grasp on, and some people track their expenses really well. They'll send me over in like a very detailed Excel spreadsheet, which is great. But if you don't, what I generally do is we'll send them the PDF version of that income gap. That helps at least start the process for them to think about what types of expenses, what both essential and lifestyle, right? So not just like paying cable bills and car payments and electricity, but also like the non-essentials or lifestyle type expenses of gym memberships. Do you like to golf, vacations? So things like that. So this sheet lists everything out that helps you at least kind of work through that process.
Yeah, and that's just the starting point, because you mentioned in the earlier in the video that like we don't take into consideration like inflation right now, or like what the market is currently doing for other things. So again, it's just, this is kind of like a very kindergarten level thing, just to get people who have no idea. Someone like me who has no idea like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis with these accounts, just to get me to understand a little bit better of the, hey, dummy, like this, you might have retirement accounts, but if you don't know that it costs, $3,000 a month for you to do X, Y, and Z, is, $100,000 going to last you more than 4 years in retirement? No, it's not.
Yeah.
So yeah. I love that idea. And
I wouldn't put it the way you put it, but yes. We just try to help people understand what they have in the easiest way possible, and then really show them ways to potentially improve it. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so we'll do that. Anything else that we should mention about benchmark analysis before we wrap up here, or?
Nothing that I can think of.
Okay.
it might sound like a very complicated thing, but the heavy lifting is done on our end, and we try to just make it as simple as possible when we're showing people how their benchmark analysis and what it actually means. And ultimately, I think a lot of people are surprised, whether it's either on the conservative side or the aggressive side. Very rarely, I think, do people actually have the right benchmark or right type of portfolio for where they are in their retirement.
Interesting. Thank you. And you did a great job of explaining exactly how it works too. So thank you for that. Now I feel a lot better about how I would be sitting down with somebody to figure all this out. So that's
Yeah.
actually, I appreciate that. So Ryan, thank you
Yeah.
very much for joining me. Again, if you are watching the video and at the end of this video, click on the link, or maybe we'll put it right up here so you can get that document so you can start to track your expenses and just kind of get the ball rolling. If you do want to just actually just sit down and talk, or I guess talk with John, Ryan, or Sam, we'll provide actually, if you go to afterthepaycheck.com, we'll have a form at the bottom of that page. Just fill out that form, and you can just book like a 15-minute call with the three of them to actually discuss your situation a little bit further and kind of see if that's somewhere you want to go, or if you just want to have a conversation, just make sure that you're kind of nudging towards the right direction, making sure you know the difference between having an account and a retirement goal, and that you're working towards having a retirement plan. So, Ryan, again, thank you very much.
Thanks. Stay safe. Everyone stay healthy. And hopefully we return to some sort of normalcy at some point soon and I can see you live again.
Yeah, right. Right. Take care.
Take care.